With the Body Smart Vodcast. I'm Alex Engar,
And I'm Cameron Garber.
and we're here today to talk to you about what is the best way to work out. So we're going to go over some of the most popular ways that we see people working out, that we like to work out, and talk about the pros and cons to each based on what it is you're actually trying to accomplish.
Right, and how each fits in. So I get asked all the time, what is the best way to work out? And the simple answer is simply whatever you're going to do and keep doing, that's probably the best way to work out for you. But there's a caveat to that. You got to make sure that what you're doing for your fitness actually matches what your goals are for fitness. Is what you're doing in line with what you'd actually like to accomplish? And so we'll get into that a little bit more about what that really means and why you may be sabotaging your goals by kind of what you're doing for your fitness. And so that's often a touchy subject with people, though. So let's dive deeper into that. So what would you say are some of the most popular things that you've seen in fitness?
Yeah, so we were just talking about this. I have a lot of friends that are really big into the CrossFit space, which that's just booming right now.
Right, it's huge.
CrossFit is huge, so we'll get into that. HIIT training is another one that we talk about a lot as physical therapists. People ask us all the time, like, well, isn't HIIT training the best way to lose weight? We're going to get into that too.
Right. Yeah.
My favorite is just, I love going for a bike ride, for a run, so kind of cardio, right? We refer to it as like steady state heart rate based training. We'll get into that. I mean, there's sports, there's a whole bunch of different things that you could be doing. And then there's powerlifting or weightlifting in general. So we're going to cover all of those, talk about what's going to be best for you and how you should think about what ways you should be exercising.
Right. So yeah, there's just so many different options out there, and each has its pros and cons. Different ways in which it can help improve your fitness profile, and ways in which you just have to be cautious about how you use it, the dosage of it. So, I mean, we think of exercise as physical therapists as kind of a medication, right? That's the filter through which we see the world, is everything can be fixed with exercise, right?
Of course.
As long as you're doing the right types of exercises, the right movements, and you intervene early enough, especially, you really can fix just about any orthopedic health problem and a lot of other, metabolic problems, heart problems, other things like that, as long as you intervene early enough. And there's obviously genetic factors that play into that make that untrue in specific cases. But for the most part, physical activity really is, I would say, neck and neck with diet in the most key factor towards maintaining and preserving our health. And so let's dive into that a little bit more as to what the different categories are. So we've got, like we talked about, HIIT training, we've got strength training, powerlifting, we've got kind of the gym-based classes, and there's so many. Zumba, I've seen, body pump or just tons of different things like that, where they're kind of led by an instructor and take you through a workout for a whole group. So kind of group exercise. And there's lots of different types. So there's anywhere from, like I said, Zumba or spin classes.
Yeah, maybe even Pilates. Does that fall under that? Probably?
Sometimes, yeah, it can. Pilates is typically a little bit different just because it's more about mindfulness and slow. So Pilates and yoga, I would maybe put those in a different category as well. But then you've got CrossFit, and then there's a lot of people that are kind of the weekend warriors that use their activities as their fitness. And so we'll talk about why each of those has kind of pros and cons. Let's start with the weekend warrior. So I kind of used to be in that category too, where weekend warrior used to be part of my workout routine, where, going to play basketball with friends or going on a hike or whatever, I considered that my workout for the day.
And rightfully so. It's a decent workout. Yeah, you can get in a lot of exercise that way.
For sure. The downfall to that is, and something I realized a lot, especially, again, working as a physical therapist, I would see people that do that kind of a thing getting injured all the time. Yeah. So playing basketball with buddies, you'd see somebody go down, and sometimes it's catastrophic. ACL tears and other things like
hamstring strains, super common.
Right, and some of that comes from, trying to be what you were back in high school or whatever. But some of it comes from the fact that we're not really in shape, and so we're going out and trying to use our activities as our fitness, And the downside there is if I'm not training for that activity, if I'm not doing the right type of strengthening and agility work and other things like that for that activity, well, then my risk of injury becomes really high. And so just playing basketball or volleyball or whatever your sport of choice is, spike ball, right, it isn't necessarily sufficient to maintain your health. Yeah. It's not bad, and it's a good thing to do, but really your exercise should be setting you up so that you can play basketball, right? So that you can play spike ball, so that you can play volleyball or run around with your kids or go on a hike on the weekend. Really, your fitness activities should be set up so that you can lead your life and lifestyle the way you want. And so that's one thing with the weekend warrior mentality that I see that is kind of a negative trend, is that you wind up kind of sabotaging your fitness because you wind up getting an injury because your joints weren't as strong or your ligaments weren't as supple as they need to be, and you wind up straining one of them. And then it's weeks off and weight gain or just muscle deconditioning. And so really, if you can use your other forms of exercise to get you prepared to be the weekend warrior, you're going to be a lot healthier as the weekend warrior.
Right. And I think we see so much people wanting to go kind of 0 to 60 in saying, well, now I want to run a 5K or a 10K or a half marathon. And so they do that weekend training. It's like, I got to fit in my training on Saturdays, right? And maybe they do a couple little runs, but then they're going hard on Saturdays.
Right.
And that really, that's what leads to, like you talked about, the injuries, the burnout. And it's just, it isn't a sustainable way to exercise. You can't just exercise one day a week and expect your body to be in shape for your entire life. It's just not sustainable.
Right, yeah. And it, like we said, it leads to injury. We see that all the time. So then what are kind of the ways that we can keep fit so that we can be that strong and injury-free weekend warrior? Well, so there's a bunch of common things. One of the most popular, like you mentioned, was that CrossFit. And so CrossFit, as a physical therapist, is something that we hate to love and love to hate, right? We love it because we get a lot of patience from it, quite honestly.
When it's not done the right way, maybe, yeah.
And so there's room for CrossFit. I really believe that. And honestly, if CrossFit is what motivates you, like we said at the outset, if that's what motivates you and keeps you doing something active, by all means, don't stop. Yeah. That being said, going intense every single day leads to injury big time. Doing momentum-based exercises, especially frequently, leads to injury. Tendons, ligaments, joints need time to recover from an intense workout. And so that's one of the things that we see with CrossFit is that tends to lead towards higher rates of injury. And now a lot of CrossFitters will say, oh, yeah, but, injury rates among runners are also quite high. And I'd say that's true to some degree, especially people just starting out. Yeah. Most of the time, though, if you look at studies about running, most runners actually have less arthritis, fewer surgeries, fewer injuries than non-runners. And a lot of the things with running, a lot of the injuries with kind of running or steady-state cardio like cycling and stuff are things where you take a couple of weeks off, let it heal up, and you're right back at it. Most don't require surgery.
Major surgery.
And, reconstructive surgery and things like that. And so that, again, I like CrossFit for the strength training aspects, for helping people to really push themselves every so often.
And to have fun with exercise, too. Right. I mean, that's a really great way.
And it is fun to see kind of what your body can do. The thing is, I think the right dosage of that is the key. And so there was a recent summit on HIIT training, so high-intensity interval training. And so CrossFit kind of fits in with a similar intensity level as other forms of HIIT training. Yeah. And so a lot of the gym-based classes kind of try to piggyback off that HIIT training mentality. So HIIT training, high-intensity interval training, has been shown to increase your EPOC or your oxygen consumption, or essentially the calories burned after exercise. One thing, there's some recent studies that would suggest that the EPOC, or that post-exercise oxygen consumption, is maybe a little overestimated in HIIT training. That steady-state cardio, the difference isn't that dramatic. So with the metabolic testing that we do here, Some of the labs with the vendor, the cardio coach, they're actually coming up with some new ways of measuring that epoch. And that has actually been shown to maybe not be, with direct measurement, to not be as wildly different from steady state cardio than with HIIT training. So, to the tune of maybe not more than like 75 to 100 calories per day difference.
Okay, so because people talk about that all the time, like you want to lose weight, do HIIT training because then you're burning calories all day.
Right.
So do you really find that to be the case?
You do in terms of, with HIIT training, it's typically not as long of a bout. So people are talking about what you get bang for your buck, right?
Yeah.
Well, I can get 15 to 30 minutes of calories burned really fast, really quickly. And so steady state cardio, you do need to go a longer period of time. So there is some truth to that. The difference in epoch, like I said, isn't much different. But let's focus on the type of calories. With the HIIT training, you may not be burning as much fat as you think. And even in recovery, just because we're recovering doesn't necessarily mean you're burning fat calories in recovery. It does tend to boost that up. But the other caveat to that is, because a lot of what you burn during the strength training phase, or that high intensity phase, is mostly carbohydrate or protein, you have to eat a lot of carbohydrate and protein to recover from that. And so some of what we show people as we do the metabolic testing is kind of that gap between how many carbohydrate and protein calories you burn versus how much you burn in fat calories. And so the larger that gap is between the two, often the more you're going to have to eat to recover and the more time you're going to have to take to recover. So at a recent summit about HIIT training, so there was a HIIT training summit where they brought in professionals from all over the world to talk about pros and cons and really the right dosage of HIIT style training or high intensity, whether, and like I said, I would put kind of gym based classes into that a lot of the time. Most of them are kind of more high intensity. CrossFit is more high intensity, and then traditional kind of HIIT workouts that you'll find on Pinterest or whatever. Right. That at that HIIT training summit, the best kind of conglomeration of research suggested that 2 days a week is the maximal amount of HIIT style training.
2 days.
And that's for more elite athletes.
Wow.
So going hard, that hard, for people that work out like 3 to 6 hours a day, is more of the optimal range. And for kind of more of that weekend warrior, only 1 day a week of HIIT style training or more intense style training is sufficient to make improvements, but also is the optimal amount for avoiding injury and making improvements.
Wow.
You actually decrease the rate of improvement and decrease your overall ceiling of improvement if you go intense too often. And so that's what this kind of the summation of the different studies reflected at this HIIT training summit, was that about 1 to 2 days a week is all you should be doing in terms of high intensity workouts. And so really, anytime you do have an intense day, you need to either take a day off or have a really light recovery day for at least 1 to sometimes 2 days afterwards. And so going high intensity too often, you're gonna need more recovery days. And then if you're taking days off in between,
right, that's not doing you any good.
Right, well, you're burning fewer calories than if you did something every day. And the other kicker there is, if I'm doing something every day rather than high intensity 2 to 3 days a week and then having to take several days off in between, your risk of kind of making excuses of I'll give myself 1 more day to recover and kind of getting knocked off the bandwagon, it's a higher risk than if you're doing something every day that becomes part of your lifestyle and life pattern.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm more of an advocate for kind of not necessarily always steady state cardio, but slower, more intense, more or less intense, more in control workouts, even for your strength training and everything. That I like to say with strength training too, if you're not in control of every movement, if you're not able to stop at any point in time in your movement, then your risk of injury is much higher. So that's one of the things that I struggle with certain gym-based classes or CrossFit. I like them for their motivational factor, but they tend to use more momentum-based exercises that, kipping a pull-up or, that kind of momentum-based, jerking the weights up and trying to go as fast as you can really increases your risk for injury. And so form is super critical with those, and really those last couple of reps is usually where we see injury. That it's that trying to fight through one more rep is usually where we see somebody's form breakdown and then injury happens.
Right. And it's so hard to just be consistent when you're really trying to push yourself
Right.
so hard. It's just
Right.
you can't build a pattern of that, like you talked about,
Right.
a lifestyle of being active when you're constantly
Right.
totally breaking yourself down to the point where the next
Right.
day you can't do anything.
Right. Well, and that, like I said, for one day a week or maybe 2 days a week, that's okay. But if you're on your second day of a high intensity workout, your risk, especially that second day or that third day, is really, really high. You're more able to kind of lose form and risk that injury then. And so steady state cardio is kind of the one we haven't talked about as much. The reason why I'm a proponent of that, so I was just looking at some studies about BMI and health risks and stuff like that last night. One of the things that it showed was a lower body mass index, despite frequent exercise. A lower body mass index shows a lower mortality rate within a certain range.
Okay.
So about 22.5 to 25 is actually the people that live the very longest.
Okay.
In BMI. And so BMI is criticized often for, like, what if I'm a BMI of 27 or 28, but I have a really low body fat percentage.
Right.
Kind of some of the studies I looked at last night suggested that the body fat percentage doesn't matter as much, that the BMI is the more critical factor, because you're still putting that extra stress on your joints, on your heart,
Right.
everything.
Right.
And so regardless of exercise or fitness level, a higher BMI is still correlated with increased risk. Now,
So real quick, let's talk for those who
Yeah.
aren't familiar with BMI.
Right.
What is a body mass index? Let's break that down a little
So,
bit.
yeah.
Because it's something that gets thrown around all the time.
Right.
And it's common for us. Like we think, oh, BMI,
Right.
BMI. Let's talk to someone who doesn't know about it.
So body mass index is simply just an easy way of classifying people into fitness categories. And so for that respect, I don't really love it. So it's a ratio of your height to weight. And so all too often we use it as a way of saying, oh, somebody's overweight, underweight, obese, morbidly obese. I don't like labeling people that way, but rather they actually have been used to stratify risk as well. And so as a risk stratification guideline, I think they're actually quite accurate. That people over certain levels actually are at a higher risk of heart disease, stroke, cardiovascular problems, and osteoarthritis.
Yeah.
And certain cancers. And so using it in that way, rather than using it as a label of, oh, you're obese, I think, especially to somebody of a low body fat percentage, they're like, I'm not obese.
Right.
Right? I have a low body fat percentage, but I'm quite fit.
Yeah.
The thing is it still is actually fairly accurate at predicting future health risks. And so using it as a risk stratification profile, it actually does a pretty good job. And so we have to be careful in what we deem as truly fit.
Yeah.
Sometimes being fit but having a higher BMI isn't necessarily the most healthy lifestyle.
Yeah. So what were those numbers that you threw out? 22 to 25?
22 to 25 has been shown to have the longest longevity.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So lower incidence of mortality.
Okay.
People up to 30 on the BMI, but that are fit. So either fat but fit, or just higher BMI because of increased muscle density.
Yeah.
They do have lower mortality than those that are unfit and in that same category.
Right.
So, and actually people below 21 on the BMI have a higher mortality than people 25 to 30 that are either fat but fit or of low body fat and a higher BMI. Does that make sense? Yeah. So being low body weight is actually more detrimental than being slightly overweight or slightly over fat but fit. And so much of what we see portrayed in media is, having this shredded body, rock hard abs, blah, blah, blah. That may actually not be healthy. And especially women tend to really desire a really low body fat percentage or a really like rock hard body. Well, a lot of times that's actually not the most healthy body and body type. And so at Body Smart, we really tend to focus less on, the image of things and more about what is your actual health. And so that's why we talk about these topics of what's the best way to get fit. Well, really, it's how do I accomplish my goals? And what really are my goals? For most of us, it's, kind of in the back of our mind, we would love to have that rock hard body. But at the same time, I think really what we'd like to accomplish for most people is I want to look good. I want to feel good. I want to be able to do the things that I want to do. I want to, feel like I look good in my jeans and have that confidence. But I don't think most of us would want to shorten our lifespan or make it more likely for us to have disease and problems. And so really thinking about the type of exercise we do and bringing that more in line with what our fitness goals are, I think that's going to be critical. And so steady state cardio has been shown in combination with strength training to be kind of the more heart healthy and body preserving combination. So strength training, and it doesn't matter how you do that necessarily. You can do HIIT training and stuff like that, but again, that shouldn't be the majority of what you do. It should be kind of a 1 to 2 days a week doing more intense style training. And then the majority of your workouts should be kind of slower, more controlled strength training and some steady state cardio for that heart health benefit.
Let's talk real quick about steady state cardio. What does that mean?
So steady state cardio, a lot of people think of steady state cardio as hitting the treadmill and going hard and sweating all over the treadmill, dripping and creating a puddle, and then that's that primary zone. Again, I think steady state cardio can be just as potentially detrimental as any other thing in terms of sabotaging our fitness goals. If we go too hard too often, we're going to decrease our performance, increase fatigue, increase hunger, and really risk those same types of injuries as we would see with any other thing. So when people say, well, CrossFit's no more dangerous than running, I would agree if people are just going out and running full tilt all the time. Yeah. And unfortunately, that's kind of what people do. More often than not, we kind of run at that kind of tolerable pace where I can run for a long period of time, but I'm pretty gassed at the end.
Right. And you feel like you're really pushing it. You're really trying. Right. Which, honestly, a lot of people wear that as sort of a badge of honor, right? It's like, oh, I went on this run, and I run all the time, and I run really hard and really fast.
Right. And we kind of, like, give ourselves this suffer score of, like, how hard did I kill myself? And some even watches or fitness trackers or whatever will kind of praise you for that. When really, it's good to see every so often and test that upper limit of your fitness. I think that's fine to do. But the majority of our training, just like our strength training, the majority of our strength training should be more steady state in control. The majority of our steady state cardio should actually be more of a lower intensity, just putting in the time, training our body to become more efficient cardiovascularly and at fat burning and all those things. And then, periods, intervals of peaking up. I talk often with people about an 80-20 protocol, meaning 80% of the time I kind of want you in this lower intensity range, usually below what we call the ventilatory threshold, at or below that level where you're really not breathing too terribly heavy, where you can kind of still hold a conversation as you run. Yeah. And then only about 20% of the time peaking up. And I would say that's probably holds true to strength training and other things like that. That 80% of the time you want to kind of do slow, steady, in control strength training, and 20% of the time, so like 1 out of every 5 days, doing something a little bit more intense to keep kind of those agility skills and that power in your game, but building that base of strength and building that base of cardiovascular fitness with the majority of your workouts. And then that 20% of the time is where you peak up and really push those limits and improve.
And I think we should get into specifics of that in a whole nother episode, because I mean we could dive into that completely, because that's a big shift for most people.
Right. Well, I spend, the testing that we do takes about 45 to 50 minutes of our initial session, but that initial session is about 90 minutes long. So we spend a whole nother 40 minutes just discussing how what we tested applies to them as an individual in terms of optimal zones for fat burning, optimal zones for fitness improvement, and kind of those ratios that we want to be in to maximize not only their fat loss and fitness level, but where are we going to help them make the best fitness improvements. And so, we spend a fair amount of time in that initial visit with people diving into what's going to be best for them based on their body after we've tested. And so that's one of the fun things is we can show you based on your body exactly why some of these other areas of fitness are beneficial, but maybe shouldn't be the bulk of your workout strategy, right? That they're complements and pieces in that, but maybe shouldn't be all of what you do.
Yeah.
And so it's really motivating to go to a class, as an example, I guess, that you go to a class every day because it's motivating, it's fun, it's social.
Yeah.
But it may be detrimental to your overall progress and your fitness level. And I get that all the time. People say, "Oh, I go to classes like every single day and I haven't lost a pound."
Right.
Or else, or people will say, I look at the fitness instructor of the class that I'm taking, and she's doing this a couple of times a day, and she doesn't exactly have the body shape that I want. What's the deal with that? And so being able to kind of explain and show people as they do the testing exactly where their optimal zones are for burning fat versus improving cardio versus improving overall health and being able to get stronger and faster and better in better shape. They're different zones in our heart rate range, and so being able to explain that a little bit more carefully to people so that they know what they need to do in each of those zones and how much time they should spend in each of those zones, that's really helpful, and allows people to take better control of their workout so they make sure that every piece of their fitness effort matches their fitness goals. And so I say that a lot to people. We want to make sure that your fitness efforts, so essentially what you're doing for your fitness, really matches what you hope to achieve from your fitness. Most of us really aren't in this mode of bigger, faster, stronger anymore.
Yeah.
But most of the fitness fads and trends out there are to get us bigger, faster, and stronger. But unfortunately, that tends to build not always the leanest body type or maybe not leanest, but slimmest body type or things like that. And I would think most people don't necessarily want to bulk up, but want to kind of slim down and feel good, look good, have a lower body weight so it's less damaging or less stress on the joints.
Yeah, not have their body torn up by their efforts.
Right, so that by 55 that they're not like a little bit overweight, that their knees are really sore and
Well, I mean, you look at athletes who are working out incredibly hard all the time. They get to 30, 35 and their bodies are torn apart.
Yeah,
and you think, well, they've been so healthy, they've been exercising. They've been exercising to go bigger, faster, stronger, push their body to the limits every day. And unfortunately, that gets them to the point when they're 30, 35 and ready for knee replacements and torn this, that, and the other all over the place.
I was listening to a local player that played in the NFL. So he played at Brigham Young University and then played in the NFL for about 12 or 13 years. Mm-hmm. And somebody said, "Oh, what do you accredit your longevity in the NFL?" And it seemed as though you never missed any games for injury. And he's like, "Oh, let's back up the train a little bit." He's like, "I had 2 to 3 surgeries every offseason."
Oh my goodness.
And he said, "I just played through the pain during the season." And granted, like, football is maybe an extreme example because
Right,
the brutal nature of
right.
the sport, but that kind of high intensity all the time, going full bore all the time, it takes its toll on you. And so people, that do high intensity workouts all the time, it does lead to injury. I have a close associate, I guess, that runs some of these gym-based fitness classes, and they're great. They're really motivating and they're fun, and they've helped a lot of people get more fit.
Yeah, definitely.
But she told me the other day that like 7 of their instructors of this type of fitness, 7 of their instructors within the past couple of months have had stress fractures.
Oh no!
And 7 instructors within a few month period that are getting pretty injured from this. That's too bad, and it's because so much of their workout regimen is really high intensity.
Yeah.
And so it's more than the body can bear, and eventually that definitely catches up with us. And so, I hate to beat this drum too much. I think we've kind of covered that concept. And we'll dive into that more later about what the 80-20 means and kind of ways to tweak that to fit you. But really the idea is we want most of our workout being fairly comfortable, fairly not easy. It still has to challenge us, but fairly low impact, gentle on the joints. And we're kind of just going through the motions enough that we're getting a good workout, but we're not needing a ton of recovery from it. And then a couple of days a week, we're doing more of where we push it a little bit harder, where we're pushing the limits of our cardio, pushing the limits of our strength training, so that we make those improvements. And really those ratios, once we get those dialed in, we see people make the best progress, where they progress steadily without peak and plateau as much, where they don't backslide, where they get fewer injuries. Right. And so, like I said, we'll dive a little bit more into that into future episodes, but hopefully this has helped people understand kind of that there's no real best way to work out. Definitely do what motivates you, but then take control of your fitness. Yeah. Don't let the class or the instructor or the CrossFit coach or the HIIT training coach or whatever that is dictate too much of what you do. You got to be in control and listen to your body and do what's best for your body. And I definitely feel like getting a metabolic test can help you dial that in. The purpose of this isn't to be necessarily a salesman for that, but at the same time, I really do believe in my core, and that I'm definitely biased that way, that getting tested really does help shape kind of your mentality behind the fitness.
Yeah. So we've actually created a free resource for this. There's a whole ebook that we've built that you can get at bodysmartutah.com/podcast. It's called The 5 Keys to Avoid Sabotaging Your Fitness Goals with Your Fitness Efforts. So everything that we've talked about today, but it dives into a little bit more how to start controlling your fitness a little bit more. Right. It dives into some of these specifics that we've talked about, like the 80-20 principle. Again, bodysmartutah.com/podcast. Go to episode 2 and you can get the free link to that download on our website.
Yep. Awesome.
So thank you so much for listening. If you have a question about something that we talked about today, or you just want to talk about it, maybe you have a different opinion on it, maybe you have questions about things that we just touched on, hit us up with an email, or you can get us on our Facebook page as well. We'd love to answer your questions here as we go forward on the podcast.
Okay. It's been a pleasure.
It sure has.
All right.
We'll catch you next time on the Body Smart Podcast.
All right. Perfect.
Thanks for listening to the Body Smart Podcast. Join us in the Body Smart community on Facebook to share your successes or ask a question for our next episode. Now get out there and take the next step toward living your active lifestyle.